Last thing I would really touch on, honestly, is just being undeniable. You know, if you say that you want to do something, just go ahead and do it. Don't listen to what anyone else says or anything else that they may think, or the little voice in your head that isn't so supportive. You say you're going to do it, so just go ahead and do it. And being undeniable is something that really stuck in my head the last 12 weeks throughout that entire prep. Right, so guess we'll get right back into it. Should be good.
It's been a while, hasn't it?
Yeah, obviously it's been a good amount of time since I've been back on camera. Uh, it's been a year and a week actually, because last week was the last time I put out a video on YouTube, which was my show day video from Easterns last year. And a bit's happened, to say the least. Obviously, for anyone who was subscribed to me up on YouTube, they either thought I fell off or died, but I'm alive and well. And for everyone who supports me on Instagram, they definitely knew I had a very productive off season, shorter than I expected it to be, but very productive to say the least. So obviously, right after Easterns, I had a successful rebound phase that was around 6 to 8 weeks. Right after that, I made the decision to go self-coach, knowing the direction that I wanted to go in and what I wanted to pursue. It's definitely a temporary thing. Even going into this next off season, the first half of it, I'll definitely coach myself, but I am looking to work with someone else. The second half of my off season, really narrowing down into my next prep, which obviously won't be for some time. But I started my off season after Easterns this past January of 2024. And I guess you could say in a surplus, it really lasted around 5 months until the back end of April, early end of May. And it was very successful. My max weight there was only around 205, meaning I started at 190. I put on 15 pounds, which isn't the greatest amount, but at the same time, the approach that I was taking is definitely the smarter approach, which was the gradual increase of food over a bit of time and not really shoving. I definitely could have fed a tiny bit harder, but for what it did and what it came to be, I definitely made the right decision. But regardless, I was tracking my lifts. Progressive overload is the way that I like to preach, and it definitely worked. Weight was flying. Everything was going great. Training was amazing. That's really all there is to say about bodybuilding portion. Outside of bodybuilding, there was so many different things going on. I was just kicking up officially my coaching business, as I was coaching people a year before that. But it was kind of just really on the side. I really didn't even have a name, a logo, anything. I ended up coming up with Evolve Coaching as my first name and logo. I was working under that for a couple months, and it wasn't until this past summer actually where I realized that I wanted something with a little more ring to it, and that's when I came up with Team Ascension. But I'll go ahead and talk on that a little bit later. Behind the bodybuilding of this past off season, there was a couple different things. Like I said, I was kickstarting up my business, even was in a bit of a relationship that wasn't really deterring me from my goals, anything, but it definitely played a part. And I feel like now that I'm focused and gunning for what I really want, that's just gonna help me put me on a whole different level. Regardless, it was definitely a learning time. Those couple months, I told myself that I did want to start back up YouTube, but I honestly just couldn't find it within me. I wanted to come back with something, and I didn't know what. And I was so focused on everything else that YouTube was almost like in the past for me. Not that I didn't want to try it again, but it just wasn't a priority. But like I said, it was definitely a good couple months of learning, finding who I am and who I want to be in this next chapter. Not only in my career, but in my life and what I want to do, where I'm destined to go. One of my biggest things was right after high school, making the decision to not go to school and putting absolutely everything into my passion and what I believed I wanted to do. And it just so happened that I made the right decision there, and I'm 110% committed to where I want to be and where I want to go. And that's the start of my journey.
So what was the reasoning behind this prep?
Yeah, so like I was saying, my prep was definitely a bit unexpected. My original goal was to take off till 2025 and compete then, and actually do Easterns again. But in the summer, when I was really trying to scale up my business, I started in May or June taking some mentorship courses with some top level coaches in the industry. And I learned a good bit, to say the least. But my main thing was I feel like I need to prove that I can put competitors on the stage. Because yes, as an athlete, this is what I want to do for the next 10 years or so. But my main love and goal in this is to put people on the stage and coach people. Even I just love working with clients, love coaching people. That is my true passion. Regardless if they are a lifestyle client or a bodybuilding client, I just love helping people. And I put my absolute all into that. Of course, where I do want to go is strictly just bodybuilding. But then again, I feel like I needed to prove it that I can put someone up on stage. And I wasn't trying to prove to anyone else. It was that I needed to prove to myself. So, fast forwarding to the middle of August now of 2024, obviously, I made the decision on a Friday to start prepping that upcoming Sunday, which was a 2-day difference. And for some, that may sound crazy, but it definitely had to play a big role that I'm always on my routine. I think a lot of people stray far from their goals right after prep. You know, they stop training as hard as they want. They start missing some meals or not even eating on their meal plan because there's no real goal in sight. But everyone knows the champions are in the off season, and that's something I really wanted to go ahead and nail. So I was able to make that decision within 2 days, jump right into prep. I was already in a lean point because right after May, when my push phase had ended, I kind of held out in a holding phase, and I did a bit of a mini cut in the summer because I felt like I just needed to bring off some fat, and it was just to have a good look for the summer, honestly, too. Not knowing that I was going to go into prep, so that almost really served as a pre-prep phase, and I didn't even realize it was really just a blessing in disguise. But yeah, obviously, I went into prep. It was supposed to be 12 weeks that I had aimed for and an original show date. But from 12 weeks, fast forwarding now to 9 and a bit weeks out, maybe 8 weeks out, I had looked, and the show that I was aiming to do, the promoters weren't really the best, I had found out, and I didn't want any part with it. So I selected another show that was actually a week earlier, and I knew I could get it. I just had to turn on. So I went from around 9 weeks out to 8 weeks out. Then a couple days later, that show that I had selected got moved up around 2 weeks. So I went out from 8 weeks out to 6 weeks out after being 9 weeks out, like 2 or 3 days before. So needless to say, I had to crack on a bit. And that's where it started to get hard. Prep is always going to be hard, obviously. We all know this, physically and mentally. Mentally, it was a lot harder for me this time than physically. Number one, because I've already done it, so my body knows what it's going through, and I knew what to expect. Number two, obviously I have more muscle this time, so food can be used a little more sparingly. But the mental aspect was definitely the hardest, only because I was coaching myself, and it's really the self-doubt that kicks in. You know, I told myself I wasn't going to make emotional decisions, no matter how bad I didn't want to double my cardio or cut my food in half, specifically my carbs. Those, once I found out I was going to be moving my show up, I knew it had to be done, and I knew these are the sacrifices that just had to be made, and I just went ahead and cracked on. Towards the first half, I was doing really, really good. I was having free meals, or refeeds, I guess you could call them, every Friday, because what I was training on that Friday was one of my weak points, because I had my posterior day the next day, and that's what I really wanted to focus on, which was my lower back, my erectors. And we definitely were able to bring them up within that time. But regardless, first half I was having refeeds Friday night. Once that had happened, I definitely had to cut that off. I was able to have a couple refeeds, maybe every 2.5 weeks after that point. They were used good, they were used sparingly. The last 2 weeks I was definitely running on fumes, to say the least, as everyone should be by that point. It hurt to stand, it hurt to get up, sit down, even have a conversation with someone was mentally challenging, which is crazy to say because the business that I'm in, not only with my online stuff, but my actual quote-unquote job, you know, being a in-person PT at a local gym, was very demanding, and I just wanted it to get it over and done with at that certain point. Not that I was regretting it, but I just wanted to say, you know, can I compete yesterday? Like, that's how it was.
How did show day go?
Yeah, so show day itself went absolutely swell. Going into the show, I had zero expectations, as everyone should have no expectations going into a show. I came in with two main goals. Was I wanted to beat my last package, which we did by a mile. And I wanted to, well, three really, prove myself to myself that I could do this, bringing someone on stage, beating overall, I guess. But the two main goals were, like I said, beating my last package and were to get the first call out in my open class. And we did both of those. Looking back on it now, show day was definitely a bit of a blur. Like I said, it was very personal to me and what I came to do. So my entire time backstage, phone was on Do Not Disturb, headphones were on. I was almost acting a bit of a dick to everyone backstage because I just wasn't really there, and it wasn't in a personal way to them. It was in a personal way to me, like, this is my time, this is what I need to do, I need to focus on this, you know. But everything was good. Peaking went absolutely great. The entire week we filled up amazing. The night before, had around 7 meals, close to 750 grams of carbs that were shoved in. Even if I spilled over a little bit, I knew I would have been fine due to different protocols and drying up overnight. I just really wanted to have an overly full look, so I didn't have to feed too hard on Saturday and risk getting bloated on stage. Looking back at it now, or even right after prejudging when I got off, I realized I could have fed up a tiny bit harder in the morning to prejudging. I wasn't flat or had spilled per se. I just didn't feel like the muscle was pushing against the skin how I really wanted it to. So after prejudging, I got up, I looked at the pictures, and I just told myself I just wanted to come in harder for finals, and we also did that. But going back to prejudging, got a little bummed out with the junior class because I was the only competitor. But it's all right. These things happen. So the medal that I collected was a participation medal in my eyes, but it is what it is. Going on to the open class, they kind of had us walk out. It was more like an eye walk. So we did a little 30-second routine that they wanted us to do. Then they brought us out all in groups, and then they called out in the first call outs. And they called my number. We got up on stage, got moved around a bit. Started in, I was towards the end, second to last end, and I held it there most of the time, or the entire time actually. Was there for 2 rounds, and then they told me and someone else on stage to stay back, and they wanted to compare us also in the second call-outs. But at the end of the day, I landed right there in the middle of both the call-outs at around 6. And then, like I said, I wanted to come back tighter, and I did. So a couple hours later, we came back, we did our routine, we looked a lot tighter. I had people coming to support me, obviously, and I love each and every single person who showed up to come and support me. But I had told them, I was like, hey, finals won't be too long. I know I didn't get top 5, even though it wasn't confirmed. But I was like, hey, I'm just going to go on, do my routine. I'm going to be there for open. They're going to call out. Probably not going to get anything, but that's fine. And we did it. It was cool. We got off. We were greeted with some crumble, which is always a good thing. As you guys know, I love it. And then that was really it. But the moment that I stepped off stage, I visualized the next 24 months and what it will be for me. Not from an athlete standpoint, but from a coaching standpoint, and putting these people up on stage to display their best, but also display my work as a coach. That's my main goal. But from an athlete standpoint, what I definitely want to accomplish is I want to accomplish building a physique that is a threat at a national level. And I will very confidently say that. In a perfect world, of course, you could plan everything out. And my goal is to go pro and do as best as I can as a bodybuilder within the next 10 years. But the next 18 to 24 months, absolute minimum 18 months. But I definitely want to put a physique up on stage that is worthy of going pro and being competitive in a pro league after a short off season after that. And like I said, I very confidently will say that. And knowing that I love this every second, it really shouldn't be a problem. It should be hard, it should be tough, but it won't be a problem.
So what's next for you?
Yeah, so just to touch on a bit of more on what's next. Obviously, as I said, from an athlete standpoint, we already know what's going on. But from a coaching standpoint, I really just want to put everything that I have into building up and expanding my coaching business even more. And not having the sacrifices of prep. Of course, I'm going to still have my off-season sacrifices, but the prep sacrifices outweigh it by a mile. How many times do you tell people you can't, go out tonight or even see them a couple minutes because you got to go to the gym and work out at this specific time. You got to cook this food at this specific time so you can eat it at this specific time. I'm still obviously eating on a meal plan and at specific times, but it's not that strict when you're in an off season versus being in prep. And that's something that's very important to me, as I'm someone who values time with family and friends and just cracking on. So that was something that I really wanted to focus on these next 2 years as I take time away from the stage, because the stage will always be there. And you just need to make sure next time you go up on stage that you display the absolute best you can. And that's what matters every time. I'm definitely going to be a lot more consistent, to say the least, this time with YouTube and YouTube videos. Everyone's been asking me about them. Like I said, I've definitely just been active a lot more on Instagram than anywhere else, as that's where I'm really trying to build up. But the YouTube videos will come back for the people, definitely, for sure. Last thing I would really touch on, honestly, is just being undeniable. If you say that you want to do something, just go ahead and do it. Don't listen to what anyone else says or anything else that they may think, or the little voice in your head that isn't so supportive. You said you're going to do it, so just go ahead and do it. And being undeniable is something that really stuck in my head the last 12 weeks throughout that entire prep. And that's something I will continue to keep in my head, especially within these next 24 months, to go ahead and absolutely crush my goals. And that's it. That's it. That's everything. We're going to build that physique. We're going to build up that business. We're going to do what we said we did. We're going to be undeniable.